And today on Let Us Serve You.
Good night,
Good night,
Doctor.
Kamal. I wonder if we could play another round of music whilst I finalize my preparation, and I'll be back in like 3-4 minutes. Okay?
That's the problem. All
Yeah.
right.
Yo! Yeah, man, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Yes, no bless the empress and the princess. Nevertheless, ever blessed, no? Run, come love me. Divine love. Run, come love me tonight. And let your love share. Run, come love me tonight. For everyone to get. Run, come love me tonight. Zion love, you know? Let your love share. Run, come love me tonight. For everyone again. Princess, don't hide away from me. No time, no day. Stay by my side, so near that I can see that. Don't let this love slip away so easily. I'll be there for you. I tell me it's not a bless them, no, you'll be there for me. And then we tell them, say the princess need a royal prince. Missing the queen of need a royal king. Me song, the princess need the queen of need, the princess need the queen of need. No need a royal prince, cause them no want no lady. No big belly man like him, I go a baby. Them want with you, them no want no gravy. Them link Jamaica, so them run west, baby. A the bubble man, them chill with. And the shady, this I know it, this I know but this I wanna know me happy, them no wanna west girl, no Brady. Ancient Rasta, yes, baby. So fast in the shake, I make me proud out, I see. Come love it tonight, and let your love share. Run, come love it tonight, for everyone's there. Run, come love me tonight, and let your love share. Run, come love me tonight, for everyone's again. It's been so long, I've been searching for you. Still I've been strong, cause it's long overdue. Then, now that we are together, our views are shared forever. It's always love, so let it be. Yeah. Hello, and a song go trim, when it up every day, you're not like a papa. Jimmy Bundy, twine up top, and the land more rim. So that's how enough of what deep and Mr. Belly brim. You have to destroy the root, or you can't grow the limb. Tunga, it's a feeling and a turban and thing. So princess, you fi come be physical teaching him and need well harder. John Marcus living, you remember Queen of Ego, Royal King. Heart a red of fire we a fling. Jack, you just come and come sing. Ooh, yeah. Princess, don't hide away from me. Stay by my side, so near that I can see. Yeah. Don't let this love slip away so easily. I'll be there for you, and you'll be there for me. Run, come love me tonight, and let your love him share. Run, come love me tonight. Oh, mama.
I'm ready.
Okay, well, welcome, Dr. Thompson. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you very much, Kaval. And once again, to all the listeners of Your Health Matters, I really appreciate it. You know, how a number of people stop me on the street and say, Doc, Wednesday night, we just lay back and we just listen. And, sometimes I think some persons, they absolutely don't intend to call. Live in a culture, sometimes people might be concerned about their voices and being recognized and so forth, especially confidentiality matters such as health and so forth. But we often want to hear your opinion, to hear a little bit more of the questions. And yeah, you can meet me on the street and ask me, Doc, what about this? A few weeks ago, you said this. Is that really true? And this, the other. And I sometimes may not have the time to stand up on back street and chat. on those particular subjects. And I imagine too that the time may be short on radio too, but when you ask a question, other people are also listening, and they're hearing the answers to questions that they might have wanted to ask too. So a pleasant good evening once again. Kamal, it's always a pleasure being here with you. And lovely music you were playing earlier, man. It was sending me to sleep, so to say. You know what I mean? But this evening, I want to talk to you about a pet subject of mine. And this is a global subject. This is a subject that I may not be able to complete the list here today of all the different foods, but do you know there are a lot of fake foods out there? I did this maybe a couple of years ago, getting into some detail, but really, food is becoming more expensive to produce, to grow, to manufacture, to package, to sell, and to put over to the public that a product is safe and authentic. And sadly, a number of people are pulling some shortcuts because there's a demand for something. They're finding a way of giving people what they think is the real food, but really and truly, they're getting fake food. And I know here in St. Louis, we have the Bureau of Standard, and they checked this out. You know, I recall when I was a minister, I was in charge of the Bureau of Standard, and it was about 2005, and there was a whole set of toothpaste, cheap toothpaste being produced, I gotta say out of China, but it wasn't being made with glycine and other products. It was being made with ethylene glycol, which is toxic. And sadly, a number of people in Panama, a number of people even in the Caribbean, but more so in Central America, bought these things from a supplier who thought they had a deal and got some cheap stuff in, was going to sell it at cut down prices, toothpaste. And when the toothpaste entered the person's body, it created a toxicity, and some persons died. Other persons, let me say, they became sterile. They became sterile. They could not have children after using this particular toothpaste. A number of other side effects. And I recall it, and there were products here in St. Vincent in the Caribbean. We had to go around and make sure we took all the products off the shelves, and so made sure people were protected. But those are not necessarily, toothpaste is not food. I'm talking about food. Now, fake food is often called food fraud, right? And these items, as I said, are cheap substitute filled with non-food items or given false labels so that they could gain a profit. Now, common examples, right? I'm going to give you the 5 big ones. 5 big ones. And we'll go through them. Olive oil. What label does extra virgin olive oil, which is sometimes and often mixed with cheap vegetable oil. So you have a container, extra virgin olive oil, but it's mixed with cheap vegetable oil and you don't know, you know? Or honey, which is diluted with corn syrup. Or paste, such as horseradish or green dye that's sold as the very nutritious food called wasabi. And various seafood, spices, Parmesan cheese. There's a lot of fraud out there taking place. And let me just go through. Now, extra virgin olive oil is often cut with cheaper oil, such as soybean, palm oil, or hazelnut oil. And these oils are cheap, and the people will gain great profit, but you're not getting the extra virgin olive oil at all. And honey, as I was saying, pure honey is frequently thinned out with cane sugar, you know, or glucose is added to it, glucose water added to it, or high fructose corn syrup, oh boy, which one of the worst things out. And wasabi, yeah, in terms of using sushi restaurants. And they serve instead a mixture of horseradish, mustard, and green food coloring instead of the real expensive wasabi root, you know? And then seafood. Imagine cheaper fish. When I say seafood, I'm talking now the fish part of seafood. Cheap fish like pollock or hake are often labeled and sold as premium cod or red snapper. Now, Kamal, do you think anybody could sell you something as red snapper and it's really a cheap cod? Do you think they'll get away with that?
Nope, not at all.
Well, I tell you something. If they're selling the whole fish, you know, nicely, but if they dice it up and they stew it up, and so you may not be able to tell the taste, you know. But because we have a fair amount of fish, that's not something common here in St. Vincent. Now, expensive ground spices like black pepper or cinnamon are sometimes mixed with fillers like buckwheat flour, even twigs, ground twigs that they ground them, right? Or papaya seeds are mixed in with it to tell you that it is black pepper or cinnamon. And Parmesan cheese, some grated Parmesan cheese sold in stores. You know, you go to America, you go to one of these side stores along some strange street, and you see Parmesan cheese, and it really contains wood pulp cellulose, or a cheap filler, or is mixed with a cheaper cheese, a processed cheese. Now, I want to go through some of these things in some greater detail and get down to another list, a broader list of foods. But these are some of the big ones. And, you know, the king of fraud seems to be olive oil. We here in St. Vincent haven't in the past been fond of olive oil because it's so expensive. I personally have been using avocado oil, which I think is better. And I have gone up to the States. I've bought a couple of about 5-6 bottles of avocado oil, come out, put them in a barrel and ship them down. And I would buy them for like $10 US, $11, $12 US. And when I come there, I see smaller sizes on the shelf for all $60, $70, $80, you know, so I'm making a savings for sure, you know, and I'm also being healthy. And I know I've checked out these oils. They're not adulterated. They're not fraud. I know I'm getting the real thing, you know, but they say that studies have been done in California that the extra virgin olive oil in stores, around 69% of the samples fail to meet the international standards for extra virgin olive oil. I mean, you can have virgin olive oil, you know, and you can have olive oil, but is it extra virgin olive oil? And so the meaning, they were either low quality oil, they were rancid, or cut with a cheaper refined oil was added to them. And a follow-up study that was done found the same thing. Things hadn't changed. The fraud usually takes one of 3 forms: blending genuine extra virgin olive oil with refined olive oil, which is, or blending it with soybean oil or sunflower oil or canola oil, and using you know, stale olive oil, and mixing it in. How could people do that sort of thing? But there are hundreds and hundreds of tons of these things available, and people could make some quick money. Now, the reason this matters in midlife for people is that real extra virgin olive oil is one of those most studied anti-inflammatory foods on earth. They found that the extra virgin olive oil is the real thing. It does have health benefits. A study called the Mediterranean Diet Study with nearly 7,500 people with high risk of heart attacks, cardiovascular risk, showed a 30% reduction in their risk. 30% reduction in their risk when they took extra virgin olive oil as in an isolated way. In other words, they didn't take other things that would help to improve their risk. Just from extra virgin olive oil, it brought it down 30%. If they added other things, it could have bring it down more. So to look at how do you spot these things? You got to look, right? And you got to look anytime they say anything like there's a cost reduction, or if you see it costing less than $20 US, that is, if it's a costing actually less than 60 EC dollars, it's probably not. But I think that's a bad thing. Why should extra virgin olive oil be so expensive anyway? And then if you find a bottle is a dark bottle or it's in a tin, they're trying to hide something, because light degrades olive oil, it's somehow or the other, it's a red flag. It's a red flag if you do not see it in a dark bottle, put it that way, because light really degrades olive oil. So you want to see it. Now the taste, extra virgin olive oil is also a little peppery, slightly bitter, it gives you a kind of a burn in the throat. If it tastes like nothing, if it doesn't have any taste at all, then it's probably nothing. It's probably not extra virgin olive oil. I'm just giving you these little tips, right? And you should care about this, because in the extra virgin olive oil, there are a lot of nutritional substances called polyphenols. And if you are not getting these polyphenols, then you're not getting the benefits of the extra virgin olive oil. That's the important thing. Now, let me go on to another one. And honey. We have a lot of honey producing some good stuff, really good stuff. But I'm sure the friends of yours and other individuals will be sending honey in a barrel or so they picked up at a Dollar Tree store, pick up somewhere else. But the food safety news, all right? The people who investigate food safety, again, have found that more than 75% of grocery store honey is often fraud. It's either ultra filtered, meaning pollen was removed, making the country of origin impossible to verify, so that it's no problem having pollen inside your honey. There's no problem at all having that. But they know that in certain places that have a Bureau of Standard, they might test it to find out what's the origin, if it has really come from where they say it's coming. And so they remove that. They're able to remove that. They're able to filter it. That's a red flag. But the reason this matters is real raw honey has measurable antibacterial and anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Honey is good. Honey is a good sugar substitute. And there are places in the world that produces excellent honey. I'll give you the names of some, but I know St. Vincent is also one of them. Get in there.
Doc,
You
I
know?
know it's a start, but we have a caller.
Okay, let's take it. Yeah. Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, Doc. How are you?
Not too bad.
Right, very well. Glad to know that. I won't be too long because, but I have a lot of things to discuss with you, not in this program. But let me
Okay.
you on the olive oil and you on the honey.
Yeah.
You know the honey. Now, the reason why why they get the German corn syrup into the honey is because during in winter time and so on, these countries do not produce blah trees and producing nectar. So what they do, they feed the bees with the German corn syrup. So where the honey is supposed to stored in the honey chamber, the bees just carry this syrup and store it inside there. And that is most of the time how the German corn syrup does get into the honey. Okay?
I see. Yes.
Now let me go on to the olive oil now. Now you see I don't use olive oil, but you see during I work with olive oil, you see when pears around, when I have a lot of pears, I will use olive oil in my food. Because the same vitamin B12 in the olive oil is the same vitamin B12 in the avocado.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So as many avocados I just try to eat at that time because it have natural vitamin B12, right? And but they do counterfeit with the olive oil and all these kind of different things, you know. But one of the things with the olive oil is the production of olive being damaged, right? And they do not get the amount of olive that they was getting as before. So the olive oil is very much expensive than before. Okay?
Yes. But listen, I want to agree with you. I am a big fan of avocado oil. And avocado is what's considered.
Wait, listen. You can talk off here with listen, you know.
Thank you very much. Okay then. Yes. Okay. Thanks for calling. Yes. Okay. Sure. You know, and I think that caller has hit on something because avocados are a superfood and we grow avocados here. Now, it may be difficult for you to squeeze the oil out of your avocado to cook with, but avocado oil, the difference, olive oil, it is such a very thin type of oil that if you try to cook with it, if you try to fry with it, you could end up burning the avocado, the olive oil. In other words, it's something that you would use to saute or put oil over your salad or use it a very simple way. You can't apply a lot of heat to olive oil. Whereas avocado and coconut oil, you can apply a lot more heat. And so I love the olive oil in that way. I do frying with it. And so when I know it is healthy, a healthy oil, and it isn't going to burn if I heat it up and so, and it has in, as was said, all these polyphenols and so on, a lot of fiber in the avocados as well. So just eating avocados fresh and so is of great benefit. And I want to thank that caller for really pointing that out. He's endorsing exactly what I'm saying. Now, in addition, I was going to get into Parmesan cheese or cheese in general. You know, Parmesan cheese is considered to be one of the better cheeses. You know, we buy a slab. Come out, you go in the store, you buy a slab of cheese. But do you inquire if it's just cheese or it is Parmesan cheese? Do you?
I just want to pick up some cheddar cheese.
Cheddar cheese, right? You know, and that's all right. I pick up cheddar cheese too. You know what I mean? But the Parmesan cheese is considered to be some of the better cheeses. You know what I mean? And they have found that a lot of the Parmesan cheese being sold has in wood pulp in it. Wood pulp, you know, the shavings for saw, and you see the pulp that comes the shavings. Now, I do not want to say, Kamal, your cheddar cheese contains wood pulp. I'm not saying that. You understand? I'm not saying that. Because something what drives this is that food is cheese that's cheap already. Maybe there's any value in adulterating it, fraud, and so it's the expensive cheese, you know? Now, why I'm bringing this up, that authorities have been aware of this issue of wood pulp being inside it for years. And the wood pulp isn't toxic. The issue is that you're paying Parmesan cheese prices for a product that's only 91% Parmesan cheese. Why should there be wood pulp in it? Because you feel somebody just can't detect it? And the only legal protective type of Parmesan cheese, I'm not going to mention any, but there's some good products out there. You know what I mean? And it has to be stamped. You know, anyway, I'm bringing up expensive food, right? But let me just go on further. And we could talk about salmon, and we could talk about coffee. Now, pre-ground coffee. Kamal, do you drink instant coffee, or do you ever ground coffee, or you don't drink coffee at all?
So it's something I seldom drink.
Yes, I'm a coffee drinker. I'm a coffee lover. But I don't ground, I use the instant. I really need to shift to ground coffee. But what I'm saying is that pre-ground coffee is one of the easiest products in the food industry to adulterate, to cut with cheaper fillers. Once ground, the visual differentiation of the coffee is gone. And once roasted dark, and the smell of these coffees are so different, it's difficult to tell what's inside it. So adulterants are including twigs, roasted corn, soya bean, chicory barley, even acai seed, acai berry seeds. And they put in a whole set of stuff inside the coffee, ground it up to create bulk, thinking that the coffee that's remaining with it. So the bottom line, in most tests, they're finding that 20% of the coffee you may buy is not coffee. 20% of the coffee is not coffee. Why? Why is that being done? You know, I suppose that's 20% more profit. And I find that that's really unfortunate. You know, now I could go down the list of a number of other things, but I want to touch on some of these things. We're lucky in St. Vincent that we're not like Grenada as a spice island, but we have lots of cinnamon. Going into the market, you see ladies with trays who are selling cinnamon and other spices and those things are rare. They're not adulterated, you know. And cinnamon, if you grab a jar in another country of labeled cinnamon, in most American groceries or English groceries, you're almost certainly getting one of the types of cinnamon. There's certain varieties, but in terms of they've been finding that there is cinnamon that's on the shelf, and so maybe a different type of cinnamon. And you know, this matters in a cinnamon is widely consumed as an anti-inflammatory type of product. Let me tell you, cinnamon is one of the best anti-inflammatory medication. It has a lot of antioxidants in it. You should be using cinnamon. Everybody should be using cinnamon, right? And It helps to regulate blood sugar. I got to tell you this, for diabetics, you should be using pinches of cinnamon in your food and so forth. It's great for your blood sugar control. But unfortunately, even though these things are real, if you want these effects, Kamal, sorry, you said something? No?
No.
Okay, sorry, I thought something. And so look out for that. Now, there's another substance, vanilla. And vanilla is something that we now see growing here in St. Vincent. I was in Grenada, seeing lots of it growing in Grenada. And boy, I tell you something. Unfortunately, vanilla is very difficult to produce. And a lot of it is produced in an island just off of Africa, Madagascar. And vanilla flavoring is so important in many products, whether it is in the ice cream industry or in other type of milks and so forth. A pure vanilla extract made from real vanilla beans, right, is usually placed first of all in alcohol, and then it is extracted, and it's a very expensive type of product. And so you could imagine these expensive products, you know, they are they're ripe for adulteration. And so pure vanilla extract is difficult to find, produced a lot, but you know, there's been now a lot of chemicals being put together to create artificial imitation vanilla flavoring. And this can be just simply synthetic vanilla. They've been able to find out the formula for the active substance in vanilla and make them synthetically. And vanilla, which has a number of other benefits and so forth, is just not there from the synthetic version. And that's really what I want to put. Now, skipping through again, the question is going to come up, why do we care about these type of things, right? It's important to care because fraud should not exist, first of all. Fraud should not exist. But there's a $50 billion reason behind this fraud. That's how much is estimated that fraud and counterfeit foods are really making. You see, food fraud is the legal and industry term for deliberately misrepresentation of food or for economic gain. Substitution, one ingredient swapped for a cheaper one, dilution, cutting the real thing with a filler, and mislabeling, claiming a product is something it isn't, it is not, and counterfeiting a fake product designed to look like a real one. All these things are illegal. And, you know, food fraud is something that many countries cannot keep up with. Difficult. And it is estimated that, as I've said, that the global fraud is somewhere between $30 to $50 billion annually, right? And, you know, the most fake foods cluster around three main traits. Any food that has a high price. Do you know our arrowroot? On the world market, a lot of people sell tapioca, which is easy to grow. And they don't have the arrowroot. but they're selling it as arrowroot, not as tapioca. And they make great amount of money as a result of it. We've mentioned olive oil. We've mentioned honey. But then there's also salmon, right? And other types of fish. Now, what's striking is how persistent this problem is. And persons have been doing studies since 2010 and finding that the same things are recurring every single year for the last 30 or 40 years. You know, they say food fraud matters more for women over 40. Food fraud matters more for women over 40. You know, I would care about this even if I were 20, or 25, or 30, but it matters more in midlife, and here's why. You know, the premium foods that get faked are usually the ones that the doctor has been spending a lot of time trying to recommend to you. We've been telling people to use olive oil or avocado oil. We've been telling people to use honey instead of sugar, right? We've been telling people to use fish and use salmon and so forth, and telling people to use various spices, cinnamon and all these sort of things. But unfortunately, these things, good food, seems to cost more money. And that's where the fraud comes in. You know, they're taking advantage of the fact that there's higher prices in order to make gains at people's expense. For midlife women, especially, 4 things stack up. Inflammation. Women, if you are prone to a lot of inflammation in your body, it matters. The premenopausal and menopausal phases come with rising baseline inflammation as your estrogen starts to fall. Let me say that again. Women who are approaching or entering into menopause in their midlife phase, their estrogen level is beginning to fall. When it's fallen to a certain low level, then they're into menopause. That's what menopause is all about. That's what change in life is all about. But during that phase, you are going to start having an increase in inflammation, because estrogen helps to protect against that, right? The anti-inflammatory compounds in your food, such as olive oil, in wild salmon, in raw honey, in cinnamon, you know, and some of these other things. If you're not getting these things and you're getting fake products, then you're not getting the anti-inflammatory effects. Now, blood sugar regulation therefore gets harder. You know, a lot of people, they start going into type 2 diabetes because of all the inflammation going on in their body. They start, the insulin sensitivity drops. In other words, the way the insulin works, you got plenty insulin, but it ain't working. Your body's not sensitive to the insulin. The insulin is not having effect. And this is all because you may not be tackling your anti-inflammatory processes going on in your body. And the foods you're eating are not anti-inflammatory foods. They're foods that are promoting inflammation. That's the point I'm making. And so shifting to honey, I gotta say that, and cinnamon, and you know, making sure you are eating some of these right things. The real extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil really goes a long way. You know, you really have to look at these things. Let me look at we're going to the end of the program, and let me just double check on a few other things. We've mentioned olive oil, we've mentioned honey, all right? And we mentioned Parmesan cheese, all right? And I've mentioned to you about salmon. Salmon is a wonderful fish. We have great fish too. Dolphin, red snapper, yellow snapper, yellowfin tuna, all these kind of things. All these things are wonderful, wonderful oily foods that are great and wonderful for you. You know, you don't have to stick with just salmon alone and so forth. You know, these things are really important. Now, there are a few foods that I have on my list that we don't typically use here in St. Vincent. That's one of the things. And I'm skipping out a lot of these things. Kamal, have you ever had wasabi? You know what that is?
I do not know what it is.
But you've had it. It's more common in Southeast Asia. It is served alongside with your sushi, right? But you and I don't eat sushi. Really?
I don't eat sushi.
Yeah, you don't eat sushi. I don't eat sushi either. I remember having a party in the United States. Somebody said, "Oh, order sushi." I ordered the sushi. I couldn't handle the sushi. I mean, I was gonna.
You tried eating some, did you?
I tried, but I ordered for everybody. Other people seem to like it, but I didn't like it at all.
Okay.
You know. Now, this may be interesting for the people who are listening out of Canada or so. Maple syrup is another expensive type of thing. We don't have it down here, you know, that much, you know, but it's common in the United States. That is, in Canada, sorry, that is highly adulterated, you know, really. So I had prepared a long list, and the important thing is that there are some good foods that are cheap, and the chances of them being adulterated is low, right? I mentioned coffee, and coffee is one of those things that seem to be adulterated because they can make certain varieties of coffee to say it's come from certain parts of Brazil or Colombia, and mark up the price and say that it's very expensive and so. But there's a lot of adulteration that takes place in the coffee industry. And then, you know, there's a lot of adulteration in the rum industry. Let me tell you, rum industry, but that's dangerous because a lot of people can tell the difference when their rum is off, you know, and I don't consider rum as a food. You consider rum as a food, Kamal?
Not at all.
Why? I don't know why around Carnival we treat it as if it's a food, right? We treat it as if it's a food.
I don't know if they treat it as a food. I don't think so. I just think that
it seems to me it's like a food. It's like a food substitute. You know, you don't eat, just drink rum. You know,
they eat.
Yes, they eat. Yes. Well, you know, this evening I could talk a lot about a number of other foods globally that have been adulterated. There's some very strange things that take place with food when people are trying to make a profit. But the critical thing is that you be aware of what's on the labels, first of all, but still be suspicious that what may be on the labels may not really and truly be what is inside the food. Now, most products that are labeled, what is inside is correct. I don't want to give an impression that every single label is incorrect. You know, Far from it. You know, labels basically give a very important thing in relation to what is really in the food itself. You know, but what bothers me, you know, is that there's just too much of these things. There's just far too much, and we are gonna have problems. I've come up with some of the standard stuff, as said, in terms of olive oil and so forth, but we have to look beyond that. I am proud to live in a place called St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where we love fresh fish and we love ground provision, dasheen and breadfruit, once considered to be poor food, hog food, slave food, is now considered superfood. And luckily, we grow a certain amount of eggs and chicken. I'm glad we've been able to introduce turkey and other forms of chicken. I hope people are producing more and more of these things at home rather than importation, because some of the meats we import have been injected, you know, with certain chemicals to make these things grow faster, and so the growth hormones that they injected in are being consumed by humans, being consumed by our kids, by our girls, and it's having a number of effects. You know, the meat, bacon, and all these other things, and so they're injecting these things with nitrates, which make them keep their reddish color, as opposed to seeming as if they're stale. You know, if they start getting more gray. You know, so by injecting them with these nitrites, but the nitrites are bad for you. But the food industry people, sometimes they don't care. They just want to sell product. They know that consumers are consumed by the way food looks. Oh, that food looks prettier, or that food looks more brighter in its color. And all those things don't always mean more healthy foods. Now, I want to take this back up, you know, again sometime, Kamal, and get a little bit more into some other foods. If I started mentioning some of the other foods, I would have been just going down a list. But I wanted to touch the top 10. I wanted to touch on olive oil. I wanted to touch on cheese. I wanted to touch on honey and touch on coffee and cinnamon and salmon. And these make up some of the major ones that are being adulterated today. Whether you travel and you are eating out, and so this could be true of restaurants and so. And so I thought, as an introductory topic, for you to be able to read yourself, you know, search for fake foods. And I really truly appreciate the fact that living in St. Vincent, it's hard to find fake natural foods. You know what I mean, Kamal? And it's only when you start to travel and you're probably a student or you're living, you know, in New York, and you're working hard, that's when you're going to start to experience a lot of cheaper fake foods that pretend to be healthy, pretend to be the real thing, but far from it, they're not the real thing. And I would love to be able to give a list at some point in time of things not to buy, right? And I'll be doing that in due course. But I think we have to help consumers. What we put in our mouths are it's so critical, right? There may be some good things inside the foods we put into our mouth, but we also have to be worried about the bad things that may be along with it. If 20% of something is wood pulp, Well, the wood pulp may not be affecting you, but you're also gonna be worried about what this is doing to your pocket because you've paid money for something. It might seem as if you're getting a little discount. What's happening is you're not really getting the real thing. And somebody is making some real money. And I could give you some real stories of death, of people who have died as a result of fake foods, of bad food, of adulterated foods. And I didn't want to put this into this particular chapter of this program, but to introduce the topic to you again about fake foods and about what you as an individual need to do. So check your closet right now. When you go out shopping, take a double look. Spend an extra 5 minutes. You're going to spend those minutes online waiting. Spend an extra 5 minutes checking the food, checking them out properly to see that they're real, to see that they're authentic. And maybe whether it's the next program or the program after that, I will really get into a lot more detail about what we are going to do. You know what I mean? With food, what could be done, and you just got to know that many of the things you buy off at the shelf at the grocery store can have some serious problems. Kamal, we haven't had any further calls and no texts or anything like that, right?
No, we didn't have any more call and no text message. But I just want to say though, I do not believe that there are fake foods here in St. Vincent. What I can say, and I do believe, is that Vincentians would love to eat healthy, but the food is expensive. Good food, healthy food is expensive.
Well, yes, but sweet potato, breadfruit, fish, these are some of our staple foods. Eggs, these foods form the core of our thing.
But
yes, and the price is going up. It's true. So here what? Make sure you have a breadfruit tree in your backyard. Yes, man.
Oh gosh, man.
Make sure you know a fisherman. Yes, man. I'm a friend. I'm a fisherman as a friend. And just read a little bit more, know about what healthy food. And Sarah, I got to tell you, Kamal, unfortunately, yes, there's a fair amount of fake foods in our supermarket. Fake foods may not be in the central market by the Iron Man, but they're going to be these fake foods in the supermarket. They're real, they're common, they're there. And I have to correct you on that. Yes, they're there. I don't know if we come to the end of the program, So do have a good evening and good night. And remember, check your cupboard, your food cupboard. Check your cart. Double check it when you go out shopping and double check your list. Be realistic. Yes, we have to look at prices and so because of what's happening in the economy, but I am encouraging you to take the time to read and look things up. Have a good evening and good night.
How much do you know about what makes up a healthy lifestyle? Your